The crucible of relational and physical rebirth, navigating transit Pluto opposition ascendant. In evolutionary and psychological astrology, transit Pluto forming an opposition to your ascendant, and by mathematical imperative, conjoining your descendant, represents one of the most intense, life-altering, and radically transformative initiations of identity, physical presence, and interpersonal relationship dynamics you will ever experience. The ascendant represents your physical body, personal identity, behavioral persona, direct vitality, and how you project yourself into the world. The descendant governs primary partnerships, one-on-one commitments, marital bonds, and open encounters with the external world. Pluto is the transpersonal force of subterranean depth, shadow alchemy, systemic dismantling, and absolute rebirth. When Pluto opposes your ascendant from the 7th house, it sets up an intense polarization across your primary relational axis. Pluto plunges your persona, physical boundaries, relationship contracts, and fears of interpersonal powerlessness into an alchemical furnace, forcing you to dismantle outgrown relational dynamics and forge an unassailable baseline of authentic self-sovereignty. 1. The confrontation with externalized shadow figures and power struggles. The primary hallmark of transit Pluto opposition ascendant is the dramatic projection of subterranean shadow material into your primary partnerships and interpersonal encounters. The issues of control, dependency, fear of betrayal, or suppressed power that you have not fully integrated within your own identity are reflected back to you through magnetic, intense, or domineering partners and adversaries. This polar alignment restructures your relational and personal baseline across several key fronts. Dismantling relational codependency, Pluto systematically strips away superficial relationship harmony, appeasement, and disempowering compromises. You are forced to confront where you have sacrificed your physical or personal autonomy to maintain peace or secure external validation. Navigating high-stakes interpersonal standoffs, you frequently encounter powerful, controlling, or transformational figures, ranging from romantic partners and business associates to open opponents, who challenge your personal boundaries. Facing these outer confrontations directly forces you to claim your own physical and psychological power rather than remaining a passive participant in destructive dynamics. 2. Transmuting personal identity and the shadow of control. While Pluto's opposition is experienced through others, its ultimate purpose is the radical metamorphosis of your own ascendant identity. The strategies your ego previously used to navigate the world, whether through passive adaptation, defensive walls, or performative charm, are rendered ineffective under Pluto's penetrating pressure. Your relationship with yourself and your boundaries undergoes a monumental shift. Exposing coercive dynamics and betrayal trauma, Pluto exposes where relational dynamics have become entangled with possessiveness, jealousy, or emotional manipulation. Facing these patterns forces you to abandon fear-based compromises and cultivate absolute transparency and clean boundaries. Reclaiming sovereign physical and personal authority, as external dependencies and fear of abandonment burn away, you stop allowing partners or societal expectations to define who you are. This transit empowers you to inhabit your physical body and identity with quiet, formidable self-trust. 3. Psychospiritual rebirth and unassailable self-sovereignty. Beyond relationship shifts, this opposition triggers a complete psychospiritual and somatic overhaul, purging accumulated relational grief, body armor, and inherited lineage patterns of interpersonal submission or warfare. You experience a deep realignment across your identity axis. Surrendering outgrown relational contracts, clinging frantically to dying partnerships or outgrown social personas causes severe emotional exhaustion. Yielding to the necessary dissolution or restructuring of these bonds allows your identity to reset on a vastly higher evolutionary frequency. Embodying authentic relational mastery, you emerge from the crucible with extraordinary personal resilience, ironclad boundaries, and magnetic presence. Pluto fortifies your ascendant core, granting you the quiet power to stand firmly in your own identity while building partnerships rooted in sovereign equality. Capitalizing on the crucible alignment. Navigating transit Pluto opposition ascendant requires immense courage, radical self-honesty, and a willingness to let go of toxic attachments. The primary hazard during this transit is engaging in destructive relational warfare, spiraling into paranoid suspicion, or surrendering your power to dominating figures. Treat this sacred transit as your ultimate initiation into authentic personal sovereignty and empowerment. The Crucible of Relational and Physical Rebirth, Part 2, Environmental Shadow, Dynamic Standoffs, and Sovereign Union. To fully comprehend the extraordinary transpersonal scope of transit Pluto opposition ascendant, and by astronomical definition, conjoining your descendant, one must look far beyond basic concepts of a temporary marital spat, minor business partner disagreements, localized legal friction, or simple frustration with how others perceive you. In psychological and evolutionary astrology, the ascendant-descendant axis represents the foundational horizon of human experience, the structural interface between self, first house/ascendant, physical body, raw vitality, ego projection, personal sovereignty, and other, seventh house/descendant, committed partnerships, legal contracts, open adversaries, the social mirror. Pluto is the transpersonal engine of subterranean power, shadow alchemy, systemic dismantling, and radical rebirth. When transit Pluto opposes your ascendant from the 7th house, it creates an intense, high-voltage tug-of-war across the relational horizon of your life. Pluto plunges your physical presence, behavioral persona, relationship contracts, and subconscious fears of betrayal or abandonment into a fierce alchemical furnace. The universe effectively projects your disowned personal power, unexpressed rage, and subterranean desire through formidable external figures, obsessive partners, coercive legal opponents, or overwhelming public encounters, forcing you to burn away codependent appeasement and forge an unassailable baseline of physical sovereignty and equal union. 1. The axis of projection, confronting the subterranean shadow in otherness. Because the opposition operates through relational projection, Pluto's relentless force initially meets you from the outside. The fears of emotional powerlessness, covert manipulation, unexpressed anger, or excessive control that you have disowned within your conscious ascendant persona are reflected back to you with undeniable intensity through external figures in your environment. This direct friction permanently restructures your relational and somatic baseline. Eradication of performative compliance. You become acutely aware of where your identity was built on pleasing others, avoiding conflict, or sacrificing your physical and emotional boundaries to secure partnership. Pluto systematically dismantles these artificial compromises, leaving no room to remain in asymmetrical or toxic unions. Confronting externalized shadow figures, you frequently encounter intensely magnetic, controlling, or emotionally demanding individuals who challenge your autonomy. Facing these outer confrontations directly forces you to stop projecting your personal power onto partners or adversaries and claim your own physical and psychological authority. 2. Power dynamics, legal contracts, and the shadow of coercion. The ascendant rules your raw presence and self-direction, while Pluto on the descendant demands total truth, psychological depth, and structural renewal within partnerships. As Pluto opposes your ascendant, your tolerance for disempowering relational contracts, subtle manipulation, or legal entrapment vanishes entirely. This intense initiation reshapes your relationship with authority, boundaries, and commitment. Dismantling coercive tactics and relational grips, you are brought face to face with intense interpersonal or contractual power struggles. Whether confronting a partner who uses jealousy, guilt, or financial control to hold on to you, or recognizing your own urge to manipulate out of a terror of abandonment, Pluto exposes hidden agendas and demands absolute integrity. Reclaiming sovereign physical authority, you stop deriving your identity, safety, or worth solely through partnership status. This transit empowers you to cultivate an unshakable internal core, clear physical boundaries, and quiet, formidable personal authority born from enduring the crucible. 3. Somatic realignment, relational purging, and identity rebirth. Beyond external partnership shifts, this alignment triggers a deep psychospiritual and somatic overhaul, burning out accumulated heartbreak, betrayal trauma, body armor, and ancestral patterns of relational disempowerment trapped in your cellular memory. Navigating this evolutionary process alters your baseline. Purging trapped relational trauma, fighting the Plutonian pressure by attempting to cling frantically to a dying relationship, suppressing rising truths, or playing the helpless victim causes severe emotional suffering and somatic depletion. Yielding to the necessary death of outgrown contracts allows your physical and emotional baseline to reset on a vastly higher evolutionary frequency. Embodying master relational authority, you emerge from the crucible with extraordinary personal resilience, ironclad boundaries, and magnetic presence. Pluto fortifies your ascendant core, granting you the quiet, formidable power to engage in relationships rooted in mutual sovereignty, radical truth, and unyielding respect. 4. Navigating the hazards of the opposition, avoiding obsessive warfare and isolation. Because an opposition generates intense relational tension, the primary hazards of Pluto opposition ascendant stem from engaging in destructive interpersonal warfare, spiraling into paranoid suspicion, or building impenetrable walls around your heart out of self-protective isolation. Mastering this period requires radical self-honesty, emotional courage, and disciplined stewardship over your power. Resisting the trap of coercive relational warfare, as interpersonal tension peaks, the temptation to use brute force, legal maneuverings, or emotional manipulation to defeat opponents can be strong. True Plutonian ascendant mastery requires dropping coercive defenses and standing in grounded, authentic physical presence. Surrendering outgrown contracts, clinging frantically to marriages, business partnerships, or social identities that Pluto is dismantling causes severe inner turmoil. Yielding to necessary transformation frees your vital force to experience authentic, empowered connection. 5. The permanent integration, master of the sovereign self in union. When transit Pluto completes its final pass opposing your natal ascendant, the intense alchemical crucible concludes, leaving behind a completely purified baseline of physical authority, personal boundaries, and capacity for partnership. You emerge from the depths as an individual who possesses absolute clarity over who they are, both alone and in relation to others. The enduring gift of this alignment is the realization that true relational security is never derived from controlling others, pleasing partners at your own expense, or hiding behind performative personas. It is an unshakable state of inner sovereignty, a subterranean fusion of deep Plutonian truth and authentic ascendant presence that allows you to stand firm as an empowered force, fully capable of building partnerships rooted in unyielding integrity, mutual respect, and sovereign truth. 6. Subterranean alchemy, deepening the dynamics of the relational horizon. Analyzing the opposition between transit Pluto and natal ascendant at its most structural level reveals an extraordinary evolutionary mechanic. The fierce collision between personal identity/physical vitality, ascendant/one-stay house, and subterranean power/contractual transformation, descendant/7th house. The ascendant represents your physical manifestation, how you embody your truth, direct your will, and project your energy. Pluto on the descendant represents the uncompromising nuclear truth that demands total psychological reality in your environment. When Pluto opposes the ascendant, it creates an inescapable stress test across your entire relational landscape. The universe effectively closes off your habitual escape routes, cutting off superficial social harmony until you stop hiding behind disempowering compliance scripts and surrender to genuine physical and relational equality. 7. The 3 phases of relational transmutation. Because an opposition forces external events that mirror internal psychological blockages, this transit unfolds in a distinct 3-phase cycle of identity dismantling and rebirth. Phase 1. The encroaching resistance. Initial approach. You begin to feel an unexplained sense of dynamic tension, relational dissatisfaction, or subtle friction in your primary commitments and public interactions. Situations where you previously smoothed over conflicts or compromised your physical boundaries suddenly feel unbearable. The ego attempts to compensate by pleasing harder, adapting more passively, or trying to tightly manage the partner. Phase 2. The crucible of truth. Exact aspect. The friction reaches a critical boiling point. An external catalyst, a major marital confrontation, exposure of secret dynamics, intense legal dispute, or profound boundary breach, forces a complete reckoning. Pluto cleanly dismantles the specific false harmony, codependent agreement, or disempowering dependency you were using to feel secure. Phase 3. The rebirth of sovereignty. Post-aspect integration. Having surrendered the need for artificial approval and desperate attachment, you experience a profound liberation of vital energy. The physical and emotional power previously wasted on managing relationship anxiety and hiding truths is now available to cultivate authentic personal mastery and sovereign union. 8. Transmuting the relational shadow, possessiveness, paranoia, and victimhood. The ascendant-descendant shadow under intense Plutonian pressure manifests as a desperate attempt to secure relationships through emotional martyrdom, weaponizing physical vulnerability, or playing the helpless victim who is crushed by others. Unintegrated, this energy devolves into toxic possessiveness, paranoid suspicion, or bitter social isolation. Pluto operates as an uncompromising alchemical agent throughout this transition. Exposing subconscious manipulation. Pluto exposes where you use helpless victimhood, over-adaptation, or covert control to bind others to you rather than allowing relationships to exist on authentic, free choice. Dismantling ancestral lineage scripts. It severs inherited familial patterns of marital submission, toxic relational warfare, and physical disempowerment passed down through your bloodline. Purifying capacity for connection. Your psyche is scrubbed clean of fear-based relational habits. What remains is a quiet, formidable capacity for profound intimacy, magnetic physical presence, and unshakable self-respect. 9. The sovereign force, absolute embodiment. The final state achieved through transit Pluto opposition natal ascendant is the complete integration of somatic and relational self-sovereignty. You no longer need to compromise your physical truth to be accepted, weaponize control to feel secure, or fear the loss of outgrown partnerships. When transit Pluto moves past its opposition to your natal ascendant, the alchemical furnace cools. You emerge stripped of disempowering relational habits, deeply anchored in your physical body, and standing firmly as an unassailable master of your own identity, boundaries, and sovereign destiny. Subscribe, like, and share.